So a little bit about me. I have a remarkably short resume. About 20 years ago, give or take a day, literally, I left a very promising career at Arthur Andersen. Did anybody else leave promising careers at Arthur Andersen? Yeah, I left before the ship sunk, and it wasn't my fault. But a couple of colleagues and we left Arthur Andersen, we moved to Silicon Valley, and together with a couple of Valley veterans, we started Sage Intacct. Like I said, just almost exactly 20 years ago. So trust me when I say it's really, really rewarding to see this audience. We've come a long way. One of the things that the partners who know me well know is that I really enjoy to get on the pitch, to get on the field with partners, to get in the trenches, to help you close deals. Over the 20 years that we've been building the business, we saw a lot of ups and downs. The market collapsed right after we closed our first round of funding. We had 9/11. There was the Great Recession, and you learn as an engineer through that it doesn't matter how great your product is, if there aren't people out there committed to selling it, right? You're never going to have success, right? So I learned early on to really depend on our partners and what you do for the business, and to really, really value your commitment. It was great to meet some new partners last night with X3. I'm really looking forward to getting to know all of you, to getting involved in your businesses, and to help you win. So today, I'm going to talk about our vision for the Sage Business Cloud. Bear with me, it's going to be a little bit of a long setup. I tend to take a long time to set up things. As I go through the setup for the Sage Business Cloud, I will be sharing with you some information that you can use with your prospects and with your customers. Those of you who have seen me present before, you'll see some familiar stats. So feel free to get out your cameras, take some pictures of those stats. Be sure to get my good side. Tweet away, be social. When I get to the section on the Sage Business Cloud, please put your phones away. It's not necessarily a well-kept secret, but we want to be very precise about how we unveil this publicly. We view all of you as colleagues, right? So we're bringing you into this, and we want to share it with you, but we're not quite ready to go out with a big bang publicly. So what I want to start with is this idea that we're now in an era of what I call abundant computing. This is really important. Up until now, everything we did in the way we designed software was constrained by the availability of computing resources. That's just not true anymore. If you go out to Amazon AWS and you go to rent their largest, most powerful instance, it's got 96 virtual CPUs running at 3.6 gigahertz. That's 3.6 billion operations per second times 96. When I built my first accounting product, it was 1/2000th that speed, and I had one CPU, right, that I had to work with, and that's not necessarily an indication of how old I've become, but rather how fast technology moves. And I was pretty young when I built my first accounting product. So we've got tremendous horsepower available to us as we build technology now. And storage is becoming incredibly cheap. It's effectively free. This thumb drive you can buy on Amazon for about $40. As I was rehearsing my script this morning, I was thinking to myself, I really just want to go buy that thing. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I want it. And so if you grew up in the 80s, if you're a millennial like me, you hoard thumb drives, don't you? Like, you don't need them, you just buy them. It's like my grandfather who grew up during the Depression. He hoarded cash, right? I hoard thumb drives, right? Because that's just what I grew up with. So storage is effectively free. Amazon's got a product called Glacier that allows you to put data into cold storage. It's $1 per month per terabyte. Right? So storage is effectively free. So it's not just the power, it's not just the storage. Things are getting smaller and more energy efficient, which is great, right? Because with all this power, we don't want to ruin the planet. I love this story here. This is Lockheed Martin's Pony Express satellite. That's sneakers underneath it. The sneakers are there for scale, right? So this satellite is literally the size of a shoebox. There's a lot of remarkable things about this satellite. Beyond the size, It's also capable of staying in orbit, powering itself for between 10 and 20 years. And the debate in the industry is that may actually be too long because technology moves so fast, they may just be sitting up there as space junk in 5 years. Right, so this is going to revolutionize space. Just to put some perspective on it, the Falcon rocket that Elon Musk has been building, the cost per pound to put something into space on that rocket is $1,500. Right, so when we think about satellites that were the size of shipping containers, what it takes to get that into orbit versus what it takes to get this into orbit, right? It really, really is disruptive. It's game-changing. So smaller and more efficient. The real breakthrough, however, is the fact that we've transitioned from managing physical servers, physical deployments, physical networks, to managing virtual servers, virtual networks, and that all has become code for our developers. Our developers are not just coding solutions, they're coding the way we host the solutions. So we've got the ability now to not even think about servers as a means of deploying our capabilities to customers. This infrastructure that we code automatically scales with the demands of customers. If you architect your products correctly, there's virtually unlimited concurrency, which is really the breakthrough with cloud computing, and obviously multi-tenancy has had a huge role to play in this, but also the capabilities we find now in the public cloud. So what does all of this mean, right? If we've moved on from this world where we're constrained, and we can really solve any customer problem, how do we apply that to building financial management software? So the first is that we move on from capturing just enough information to put out our financial statements to capturing every transaction in real time with enough detail to measure everything we want to look at about our business. You'll see as I go forward to some statistics, customers who are living this ideology. Number two, it means effortless elasticity. I talk about a customer in Chicago who's in the business of selling school supplies. Right, so you can imagine they do roughly 90 to 95% of their revenue during 2 weeks. So imagine the person responsible for IT in the old world having to build out infrastructure to scale for those 2 weeks. And with the requirement that if it goes down, right, they're losing massive amounts of revenue. That company in the cloud now, they don't think about it, right? This effortless elasticity means that their peak season means nothing to them other than they're taking in all that business. It also means zero latency analytics. If we can get all the data in, get it in real time, apply that power to it, we don't necessarily have to go out to external systems to do rich analytics. We can do that right at the source. It means that we can audit every transaction that flows through the system now looking towards the future in real time. And as we get into AI and machine learning, what we all know is that machine learning is very, very hungry for data. Right? So by encouraging our customers to bring all the data into the system, we can then use that data to train the machine learning models to be very accurate. So I know you're going to want to get out your cameras for this part. So every year I give you an update on how the largest Sage Intacct customers are scaling across a few dimensions. We now have a customer who has processed 628 million transactions in the system. The remarkable thing to me is that little arrow. They did 50% of that in the last year, right? So in 1 year, they processed over 300 million transactions. That's one customer on the Intacct system. We've got a customer now approaching 1 million vendors in accounts payable. We've got a customer now over 5 million timesheets. This is remarkable. We have a customer with over 3 million customers in their AR. I think it's the same customer generating over 30 million subscription revenue contracts. I think it's a dating site, but I'm not sure. And by the way, love must be good because it's 67% growth year over year, so good business right now. And by the way, these are not necessarily large enterprises. These are some of our larger customers, but I don't think they qualify as large enterprises. They actually are living the philosophy that if they feed all the data into the system, they can get really, really rich results out of it to help them run their business more efficiently and more successfully. So all of this while the average response time dropped by about 5% over that period. Sage X3 is no slouch either. It's pretty remarkable what customers are doing with X3. One of the things that I think is so compelling about X3 is just how globally the solution is deployed. We're now deployed in over 80 countries, roughly coming up on 7,000 customers. We've got full compliance in 31 countries for X3. The thing that I love is the 650,000 number, right? If you want to understand the relevance of X3, look at that number. There's 650,000 people who make a living on the X3 platform, right? These are not casual users. These are people who go to work. They do their job on X3 all day long. 650,000 of them. So in addition to this idea that computing is abundant and cheap, what it's doing is it's powering our accessibility to disruptive technology. It's not just AI, by the way, it's blockchain, it's IoT, right? There's a number of things that this abundant computing power is enabling, but AI in particular is going to play a very big role in our innovation agenda. And what's really happening right now is companies like Amazon, Microsoft, Google, others, they're creating services that make these capabilities accessible to anyone, right, who wants to build upon this technology. There are off-the-shelf capabilities now for anomaly detection, forecasting, image recognition and classification, natural language processing. If you can imagine it, you can build it with these capabilities. So this is what's driving and making possible our innovation agenda. We've been, I think, pretty consistent over the years with what we want to create for our customers, what outcomes we want for them to achieve. And it all goes back to this idea that accounting and finance is a largely cyclical industry, right? Everything works on a monthly cadence, a quarterly cadence, a yearly cadence, whether it's the close, it's audits, it's year-end tax filing. The problem with this cyclical cadence is that you really only have point-in-time visibility, right? And often that point-in-time visibility is after the fact, right? So, once a month when you get through your close, you know exactly, right, where your business is. At the end of the year, when you go through your audit, you've been given that stamp of confidence that the numbers are accurate. And so our whole vision is to make all of this continuous with the idea that we can create some pretty provocative outcomes. We think that we can completely eliminate the close. Now, if that makes you nervous, we can just change the words a little bit. We can make the close continuous, right? So that you're always in a position to understand how your business is doing. If you're always in that position where you know what your business is doing, you also need continuous assurance, right? You need to have the confidence that the numbers are accurate, right? That you're making decisions based on accurate numbers and that the company is behaving, in the controls that you've specified. All of that is going to free up your teams, your customers' teams, from that repetitive work, that low-value work, and enable them to work on higher-value work, like looking at the future, helping companies to make the right decisions. And that's the third pillar, right? Applying AI to enable us to see the future. This is CFO 3.0 right here. So I've been talking about this a lot. For the first time now, we're sort of breaking down what are the 3 areas of investment we need to make to eliminate the close or make the close continuous. Pretty straightforward. First, we've got to capture every transaction in real time, period. Second, we've got to have that ability to continuously reconcile. So, what's in the books from what's reality, we've got to make that continuous. And we also have to make all those things we do at the month end, like allocations, right? We've got to make those continuous as well if we want the numbers to always be accurate. So we've been doing a lot over the years towards this, but one of the most exciting things that happened was last fall when we acquired a company called AutoEntry. AutoEntry is a really, really exciting product. Essentially, what it does is it allows users to take pictures of invoices, bills, statements, bank statements, you name it, upload those to the system, or they can scan something and upload it to the system. The system then applies AI to the image and extracts all the relevant information, categorizes it, and posts it to their accounting system, right? It's effectively automating the work of entering transactions. The uptake on this capability has been remarkable. Their product was launched in 2016. They're now processing over 2 million documents per month. and it's growing like a weed. I did a little math over the weekend on this. They've just passed 4,000 accounting firms using the product. That 4,000 is growing at over 100% per year on average. We're now over 100,000 customers using it. That's growing nearly 200% on an annualized basis. And what that does, if you remember, machine learning AI is super hungry for data, right? It's feeding more and more data to the AI. So the data lake that we use to support the AI has grown by 400%. So what does that mean? It means that now our accuracy in the machine learning models has doubled, and the time it takes for those models to make predictions has been cut in half, right? So this will have a compounding effect as the system grows over the years. Now, I know you're all super eager to get your hands on this. As Lee said yesterday, we're starting off with accounting firms. We think this is critical for accounting firms to gain the efficiencies they need in their businesses. Over time, we will be making this available to other products in the portfolio, including Intact and X3, so you'll have to stay tuned for that. Okay, moving on, right? The other part of our innovation agenda is this thing we call continuous assurance, like the idea that if you're gonna have real-time information, you have to trust it. There's several pieces to this. We're gonna use AI to do continuous detection, right? We've gotta find anomalies before they actually become an issue and allow humans to review those. We have to create ways for humans to work with AI on that anomaly detection, and then we have to create ways to redesign processes to make sure those anomalies don't happen again. So that's the detect, review, and assure cycle. Now, we talked about our new anomaly detection capabilities in Sage Intacct that's just now in preview. I'm gonna take a little different approach to talking about this. And it gets back to this idea that we've got all this computing power at our fingertips. The real breakthrough that we wanted to give to our customers was continuous testing of every transaction in real time. And we believed we could do that by taking advantage of the public cloud and the ability to elastically grow to meet demand. What we found, however, is that humans weren't quite ready yet to trust AI. Right, so let's imagine that our models have the accuracy of calling out about 1% of transactions. Well, if you go back to that customer who booked 300 million transactions last year, are we really going to ask them to review 1% of those? You know, I can't do the math right now. They have 3 million, right? 3 million transactions they have to review. So they're not going to see AI as adding any value. On the flip side, if the AI misses any one of those transactions that gets through, right, again, they're not going to trust the AI. So what we did instead was we said, let's actually show the humans who are reviewing transactions how AI might help them. And so we created a user experience where AI is scoring the transactions. When they go in to review something, AI is pointing out, why it actually scored it the way it did. It's explaining the results. In this case, that we've created a transaction with a combination of department and GL account that we haven't seen before, right? So this is a bit of a journey as we build these capabilities that tap into this power we have to be really cognizant of the relationship between AI and humans. We, as I mentioned and others mentioned, we're in early release with this. We've got a couple customers who are testing it. I went out to our Sage AI Labs team to collect some stories and some quotes. I really wanted to be able to give you some insight into, how this is really working in real life, and I got a great quote for you. The others were way too long to put on the screen. But when you talk to the team, you just see their eyes light up at the reaction customers are having when they see these transactions that are being flagged. In many cases, they would have missed them. This can be material, right? An extra digit on a transaction, material, right? Coding revenue to the wrong profit center, material, right? So ooh, cool is a little bit of an understatement, but it's having a remarkable impact. As we talk to customers, what we found is between 10 and 20% of manually entered transactions require some form of review, 10 to 20%, right? So humans can't possibly hope to keep up with all of that. But also it erodes confidence, right? The very thing that we're trying to solve, right? We're trying to create confidence, and the inability of the humans to keep up with this actually erodes confidence. So I stole this slide from Mark yesterday. Apologies, Mark, I didn't ask for permission. But I think it's actually a really good slide for me to use also in summing up where we are. Cloud computing's a given, right? It's unlocked unlimited computing power. It's enabling us to have accessibility to things like artificial intelligence, where in the past, it just wasn't possible unless you had an army of AI engineers. The important thing now is that all this capability is driving digital transformation, right? Effectively, what that means is that until this point, companies have been using technology to make tasks more efficient, right? To create more efficiencies in their business. Digital transformation says we're now going to use technology to create digital business models that help our businesses to be more successful, right? To perform better, right? That's the breakthrough with digital transformation, and so that's the era that we're coming into. Mark and I and others comment about how, it's a bit trendy right now, it's a bit in fashion, but it's real, right? And it's lasting, and it's going to be a huge opportunity. It's $2 trillion of annual opportunity for the organizations that are helping companies to get through this transformation. And we're all in a really, really good spot to take advantage of this. Our customers, right, the buyers of our solutions, the buyers of our services are leading that change. So why are they leading that change, right? They've got tremendous demand on their jobs now. Their jobs are changing. It's not about compliance anymore, right? They're being asked to provide counsel to the business. They're being asked to provide real-time data. There's a number of things they're being asked to do, and the conclusion that CFOs are coming to is that it's not possible unless they go through a digital transformation in their business, right? So they're now becoming the leaders and the top customers of the digital transformation. Oh, so a couple other thoughts there before I move on to the vision. The other good news is that our customers, especially Sage Intacct customers, are what we call digitally determined, right? They are already making investments to transition their businesses to digital business models. 368 customers now are exercising the API over 1 million times per month. 30 of those over 10 million per month. The number of web services tenants, that represents basically all of them in production. And there's now over 1,200 unique organizations that are developing capabilities on the API. That's organizations, not individuals, right? So there's a real determination. The best proxy for that is if you look at how we deploy our servers to support our customers within Sage Intacct, 70% of those servers are allocated to automated work. Right? That effectively says that 70% of what's happening to run businesses on the software is automated. That's a good proxy for how far we've come with digital transformation. So, punchline. The abundance of computing power, the accessibility of transformative technologies like AI, it's going to do more than just allow us to automate the routine and the repetitive. It's really going to enable digital transformation. And what I really like, what I think is the hook, is it's going to empower humans to work at a higher level. We have posters at our office in San Jose that say, robots lack social skills. That's not to be underestimated. Humans are social and AI never will be, right? It will fake social. So as I go through the vision for the Sage Business Cloud, 2 questions I want you all to sort of keep in your mind, right, and test against what I'm talking about. So the first of these is how will we, and I say we collectively, partners and Sage, enable our customers on their digital transformation journey? Number 2, in the process, how will we collectively elevate the work of humans, right, in this world where they're doing very different, much more valuable work? All right, now you got to put your phones away. Very long setup, I know, sorry. So the Sage Business Cloud, as we did research, we talked to customers, we talked to lots of colleagues who are doing a lot of work driving the business forward. We came to this conclusion that there really is no thing today that describes what we need to build in the Sage Business Cloud. And so with the Sage Business Cloud, we are introducing the concept of what we call a digital environment. And we're being a bit bold here, right? We're saying that the digital environment is the next evolution in cloud computing, right? It's extending multi-tenancy as a breakthrough architecture in cloud to add this idea that we have to have relationships with every individual and every organization that interacts with our technology, right? And if we can actually understand all of those relationships, we can create networks, and we can drive digital connections through those networks. We can automate a lot of what happens between those relations that happen in a business's ecosystem. And if we elevate that concept and we think about, well, what's AI's role in this? It's no longer just to look at a tenant's data and learn from that tenant's data. We can now look across all the activity in these relationships, right? And we can build solutions that support everyone, right? That make the world better for everyone. And as we imagine this digital environment, we think that users and organizations are going to traverse the environment using a number of tools, products, applications, and services. And what we want is to create a consistent experience that recognizes modern ways of working. And lastly, it's vital for us in this digital environment that it reflects a brand, right? There's a familiarity to it. So I'll get into each one of these in detail. So I have to be really careful about how I talk about this. When I first wrote the white paper, the section was titled Identity is the New Tenancy. And so you might infer from that I'm saying multi-tenancy is dead. What I'm saying is that identity is the new extension to tenancy, right? Where a tenancy was a container for a company's data and configuration and allowed, the breakthrough in cloud computing of seamless upgrades and, economies of scale. Effectively, as a container of data and configuration, the tenants aren't aware of each other, right? Businesses might be on the same system, but we're not doing anything to connect them. So with identity, we're essentially saying every individual, every organization, irrespective of whether they have a license that interacts with Sage software, we're going to create an experience for them, right? We're going to connect them through their relationships. And so identity enables these concepts of a seamless digital experience, of digitally connected ecosystems, an end-to-end digital journey where we are curating an experience from their first interaction with Sage, right? Their first time landing on a website, through all the functions when they get billed, when they go for support, across all the products. So that when they've learned that, when they felt that, they're going to stay in the environment. So that's the first concept. The second concept is these digital connections, right? If we can understand these relationships, we now have the technology to make digital connections between them, right? We think about specific relationships. An example of a relationship might be supplier or customer, right? In that relationship, we're billing, we're paying, we're doing some statement reconciliation. If we can make that digital connection between a supplier and their customer, not only can we facilitate the digital transaction exchange, we can do a number of things that are really leveraging human skills, human relationships. Workflow. Whether I am approving a purchase order or approving a new headcount requisition, it's effectively the same work, right? And we want our users to have the same experience irrespective of what product or technology is driving that workflow, right? So we can create these workflows around that experience, but more importantly, those workflows might span organizations, right? Think about what you do in the accounting industry with your clients, whether it's reviewing your year-end reports. Think about the process of negotiating contracts, right? So your ability to have workflow with a prospect who might be reviewing a sales or a sales quote, right? So we're expanding the idea of workflow to cross the network. You should be able to collaborate and communicate, right? If something breaks down in the workflow, let's use our human skills and relationships to fix it. And then lastly, and this is super, super important, there was a question yesterday that was asked about, blockchain. What are we thinking about blockchain? Well, imagine if we can actually create these networks, if we can get everybody connected, if we apply blockchain to that, we can provide what we call programmatic trust. All right, this idea that if it happens in the network, across the network, then we can provide abilities to actually secure it, to make it perfectly auditable, et cetera. We're going to give you a little bit of a preview of this here later in our session. So the third idea is that data benefits everybody. We elevate the idea of AI to not just learn from a customer and their behavior, but to learn from the entire activity across the ecosystem. And we take the approach that if you've committed to living in this digital environment, right? If you're a resident of this digital environment, that as we build capabilities based on what happens in the environment across all these ecosystems, those abilities benefit everybody, right? Things like collective intelligence, things like doing global forecasting that cross businesses and industries, right? We should all be able to benefit from that. One thing that we're very, very sensitive about is the idea of privacy and governance as it relates to AI, right? So while we're building all these capabilities, while we're empowering the ecosystem, and we want people to see the benefit of living in this digital environment, we also need to reassure them, right, that we care a great deal about privacy, that privacy is in their control, and there are strong governance programs in place to protect them. So fourth is experience. You go back to that question, what are we going to do to elevate the work of humans? Number of concepts here. First is this notion of balancing more away from graphical user interfaces and more to natural user interfaces. In my history with Intact and now with Sage, I continually have experiences with prospects who care a great deal about how long it takes a user to enter a bill on an AP screen, right, on a form. Some of our larger customers would run tests. They would compare us against other systems. And if it took 14 seconds to enter a bill on Intact and 12 seconds on the competing system, we would lose the deal. I did a call with an X3 prospect a couple months ago who they were very, very concerned that they've got 30 people who do nothing but enter bills all day long, right? That's what they do. They've got thousands and thousands of bills to enter every month, and they were super concerned about how efficient they were going to be. My answer was, why do you have humans entering bills? I wasn't like that in the conversation. I was very diplomatic in talking to him about that, right? But it's now less important, right, that humans can be efficient doing repetitive work. We still care about that. It's still going to happen. It's less important. We're focusing on natural user interfaces now, right? We want to enfranchise individuals who didn't touch the technology before because we didn't have an experience that worked for them. How many times have I talked to customers who didn't buy our purchasing product because they didn't believe that their employees would log into the ERP system just to approve purchase orders, right? So we have to create these new ways of working. The idea that perhaps, and especially with the millennials moving in and younger generations, they're totally comfortable using text-based interfaces, talking to digital assistants, right? They're more comfortable on their mobile devices than they are in big applications, right? So we have to gradually transition more of what humans do to these natural user interfaces. As I mentioned, we have to create these common interaction tools. If you're doing review, if you're doing collaboration, if you're managing a task lists, it shouldn't matter what the underlying product is. We want you to have a common tool for getting it done. We've got to recognize new ways of working. There's changes in our corporate environments. I would imagine that virtually everybody in this room is using either Slack or Microsoft Teams, and a lot of what you do in work now happens there. Let's meet you there, right, for a lot of what you need to do, by giving you bots, by giving you natural language interfaces, right, so that you never have to go into that big monolithic application to get your work done. We have to recognize that in the era of the cloud, the product is the business. Right? That implies that you're designing a user experience not just for the activities you get done in the product, but through the entire cycle, right? Through every interaction across every function, right? So as we think about experience, it's now all-encompassing with the relationship with a customer. We have to keep in mind that AI and technology are going to be automating this repetitive work, and so we have to manage that relationship, right? So as we were previously thinking about the importance of efficiency in the UI, now we think about learnability, we think about confidence, we think about trust, we think about this idea that humans just want to know that they're making the right decision, and that's what drives the design of our user experience. And then lastly, we have to create ways for humans to collaborate across their relationships, right? To use those social skills, right? So we create a number of capabilities that will enable rich collaboration across everybody who interacts with the technology. And lastly, values. In everything we do through a digital environment, we have to create a sense of safety, right, and trust, because there's a familiarity there, right? They know what to expect. They believe that the next product they buy that's designed for the digital environment, they're going to be very successful with it because they already know the ways of working. They've already used the tools. But it's really more than that. right? It's what we build, it's what we don't build, right? It's the language that we use, right? When we really understand the values that we want to convey through the experience, it's all encompassing the way we design every interaction. And that's really super, super critical. So, punchline, after all of that. Not my favorite graphic. Please don't take a picture of this one. We're going to come up with something better when we launch this. But the punchline is that the Sage Business Cloud is a comprehensive digital environment for finance and operations that's composed of platforms, applications, services, and a vibrant marketplace. Sage ID creates these digital connections that link businesses and organizations together, and all of it is supported by the Sage Design System, which creates that experience, creates those tools that we want everybody to use as they traverse the Sage Business Cloud. As you saw yesterday in Lee's session, we've done a really good job, I think, simplifying our model portfolio. What is it that we're building for our customers? Who are those customers in what markets? And to this point, as we talked about the Sage Business Cloud, we've talked about those products. Well, now essentially what we're saying is the Sage Business Cloud is much more than a portfolio of products. There's 3 areas of investment. The first, as I've been saying on and on and on, right, is the digital experience, supported by the Sage Design System and a collection of digital experience tools and services that we will be creating. Second, the digital journey, right? It doesn't matter how you get into the Sage Business Cloud, how you roam around, what your interaction is. We want that to be a carefully curated experience for our customers. And then lastly, and perhaps most powerfully, the digital ecosystem. The idea that if we graduate from multi-tenancy as the core, organizing principle to identities and relationships, we can actually build digital ecosystems, right? We can connect companies with everybody that they interact with and support them with tools to enable them on their digital transformation journey, right? So all of this is really made possible through Sage ID and the connections that we form there and understanding our relationship with every individual that interacts in the Sage Business Cloud. It's more than a vision. We've actually made a lot of progress in some of the enabling technologies that are going to make this happen. An early area of focus is in what we call the service fabric. Part of what the service fabric does is it creates business services that are common across products in the Sage Business Cloud. Whether you're on Intact, Sage Accounting, X3, 200, 300, 100, right? You got to deal with banking, right? So we've created services for the Sage Business Cloud that automate the banking that every Sage product can connect to get those capabilities. So we now have 19 products that are integrated with the banking cloud, for getting your bank transactions. We're supporting banking in 11 countries now. Steve, you'll be happy to know that my objective for the year was to get to 100,000 customers on the banking cloud. I promise you I wasn't sandbagging. We're at 120,000 customers now using the Sage banking service. About 51 million transactions that have flown through so far. Payments is critical, right? We're approaching $2 billion in payments that have been processed across our payment services, 38 million-ish plus transactions. Compliance is huge. We've got support in a dozen or so countries to support year-end compliance requirements. It's been huge for our business in the UK in support of making tax digital. And we're now working on document exchange, right? This idea that we can digitally transact across the network. We're also working on the capabilities that glue everything together. Sage ID, it's real. It's actually connected to 140 products in the portfolio. We're managing 2 million plus accounts on Sage ID, and 1 million of those, there's 1 million logins every day across Sage ID, right? So this is real, it's already being used. In addition to this, we're working on telemetry, our ability to understand user behavior as they move across the Sage Business Cloud. Collaboration and notification are first attempts to connect those relationships and give them abilities to communicate. And lastly, provisioning. We have to get paid after all. And Sage ID is critical for all of this, right? We can't bill our customer if we don't know who they are, right? We want a customer to have one commercial relationship. So Sage ID makes all that happen. Okay, so I know that there's a lot of concepts here. There's a lot to digest. What we found was that if we take you through a bit of a storyboard, we find that it's really, really effective in helping to understand the vision. Now, the storyboard that I'm about to show you, it doesn't explain everything. It only touches on a couple of concepts, but hopefully you'll get the gist of this. So I want you to meet Annie. Annie is a bookkeeper at a company called Webalicious. And so that you know that my personal fingerprints are on the storyboard, that was my idea, the name Webalicious. Marketing would never get away with that, but I can get away with that. So Annie is a new customer of Sage Accounting, right? And because she's a bookkeeper at a small business, she's pretty much responsible for all the relationships, vendors, customers, employees, right? So she has a lot to do. She chose Sage Accounting, right, because it's a very, very easy to use, easy to get started product for small businesses, right? So the first thing we're gonna ask Annie to do after she signs up is to create her Sage ID, because that's how we manage our relationship with Annie going forward. After she creates her Sage ID, she's gonna tell us about her business, right? So she fills in some basic information about Webalicious. And now we get into the fun stuff. We're gonna ask Annie to connect to the Sage Business Cloud. Right? This is going to be Annie's way of making digital connections with all those relationships that she's managing, customers, vendors, employees, accountants, etc. And after she connects, we're going to start enabling her to use some of these experiences that we're designing. In this case, there will be many more, but in this case, we want Annie to sign up for her favorite communication or collaboration platform. So I don't have a preference, by the way. So Annie chose Slack. She gets connected. We ask permission to connect to Slack, right? And now in addition to her experience in Sage Business Cloud Accounting, which also has a great mobile app, it's got experiences for the watch, right? She knows that she's going to be connected now through her corporate communication platform, right? So I love that she's blinking, by the way. That's how you know that I didn't work on this. We had really, really great creative people working on this. Okay, so fast forward, meet Bob. Bob is an accounts payable clerk at a company called Digital Success. They're a professional services organization. They're a medium-sized business, and they are a customer of Sage Intacct, right? And so Bob understands that they have just hired Webalicious to do some website designs for them, right? So Bob's job is basically to make sure that everything around the payables process is secure, right? It's controlled, and it's efficient, right? That they're maintaining good relationships with their suppliers. So the first thing Bob's gonna do is he's gonna go into Intacct, and he's going to add Webalicious as a vendor. So we're in Intacct, right? We're adding here. And this is really cool. So as Bob starts to type, you can see that it's doing some autofill here. And lo and behold, Webalicious is actually already in his list. And because it's part of the Sage Business Cloud, right, he can now form a digital connection. So this is really, really key. The Save button, it normally just says save, but because Webalicious is in the Sage Business Cloud, it says save and connect. All right, so what happens now is Annie looks like she's had a lot of free time because accounting is making her life better. She's done a little shopping, she's sitting in the park. My hope is that she's the kind of personality that likes being interrupted by Slack when she's in the park enjoying her shopping, right? But we notify Annie through Slack that Digital Success would like to create this digital connection with Webalicious, right, on the supplier-customer relationship. Why didn't we make this automatic? Right, it gets back to this brand value of privacy and trust, right? Because when I enter into a supplier relationship, I'm disclosing information, right? I need to tell Digital Success, who's their billing contact, right? This is an individual with personal information. Right, I'm going to have to tell them, what is my banking information to pay me if you're not going to pay me through the Sage Business Cloud, right? So it's really important that Annie is affirming, right, that she's making this digital connection with Digital Success. Now, in a bigger business like Digital Success, they'll probably create rules, right? If it meets some criteria, automatically accept the connection. Maybe there's some that I want to review, right? So we'll make sure the experience works for small businesses and medium-sized businesses, but the affirmative consent, right, that I'm actually going to share information and I'm going to interact is really, really important. All right, so now that they're connected, right, everybody can go about their business. Super cool. Digital Success is automatically added in Sage Accounting to the customer list. Right, we've got this little icon that shows that there's a connection between them. And this is I love this graphic, time is passing. She's being very productive. At some point, she needs to bill digital success. So as she goes through in Sage Accounting to create the invoice for digital success, right, we're going to prompt her to let her know that they're connected to the Sage Business Cloud network. Right? So when Annie creates that invoice, she's not going to mail it, she's not going to even email it. It's actually going to be directly delivered into Sage Intacct. Now, it's not going to go in as posted, right? It's going to go into Intacct, with some allowance for review, right? But what's really cool about this is because it wasn't email or paper, because it was a digital connection, Annie can now track, right, the progress of this invoice, right? She knows affirmatively that it's been delivered at this point. Right, so fast forward to Bob, who's over at Intacct, right? This bill has shown up. Now, we'll create some experience that allows Bob to have the control that he wants, but it's super cool that Bob didn't have to do anything, right? When Annie invoiced digital success, it came in to Intacct automatically, right? And there's some review that'll happen, but Bob's gonna have the confidence of knowing when he looks at this bill, right, that it came over this digital connection, he can trust the authenticity, right? He understands that this is not fraudulent, it's real, and he can be much more efficient in the way that he manages this particular bill. And of course, as time progresses, as Bob pays the bill, Annie doesn't have to do anything, right? It's automatically updated, she knows the status, and when Bob pays her, right, it automatically reflects that and automatically gets booked against the invoice. And because Annie, is a big user of Slack, right, she's notified about the payment in her communication channel of choice. So this is just a small piece of what we can do when we think about creating connections across relationships. As we think about creating new experiences, new ways of working for humans that are not doing the old repetitive work that they used to do, right? So it's things like communication tools. It's the ability to digitize shared transactions across connected parties. Things like a shared task list, right? Sometimes there's a huge transaction that you're working on between two parties and you both need to collaborate over a task list. So, there's a lot we can do with this. It's really going to enable a ton of innovation in the future. So what I want to end with here is what does it mean for you? There's, I think, a pretty compelling story for each of you, whether you're in our SIAP program, whether you're a reseller, whether you're a marketplace partner. There's a ton of value in this for each one of you. For accountants, I think it's pretty straightforward. It's two things. We're going to enable you with the tools to have richer digital interactions with your clients, right? Real tools for workflow, real tools for collaboration. But we're also going to give you technology to enable you to automate all the repetitive so you can focus on higher value services. For marketplace partners, we envision that eventually we will open some of these tools and services to you, right? Someday, we'll make Sage ID available to you so that you can connect in to the digital environment, that you can look at the directory and you can create capabilities around relationships. We will look at how we can give you access to some of these digital experience tools, right? So if you want to raise notifications and take advantage of the collaboration system, you can do that. The idea is that in the digital environment, your ability to integrate graduates from simply moving data around. Right? It's actually now really integrating ways of working across the digital environment. And then lastly, for resellers, the punchline is straightforward. You need to be the leaders of your customers' digital transformation journey. And it's our job to give you the tools to be those leaders, right? To help those customers along that journey to transform their businesses. So we think tons of value across for every one of you in the way you leverage what we're building for the Sage Business Cloud. So with that in mind, I've told you a little bit about what we're doing. What I'd like to do now is invite up our head of ecosystems and emerging technology to show us some of the work that's going on. So, Shivani.
Thanks, Aaron. Good morning, everyone. Are you ready to have some fun? So I've been told this is a friendly audience. I've been told that it's a trusted audience and I can share things with you. And so what we're going to do is go a little bit behind the scenes and show you some of the things that we're working on at Sage. Now, we've all heard about digital transformation, and technology is at the heart of this transformation. A little bit about myself. So I live in Silicon Valley at the center of technology innovation. I live, breathe, and dream technology. And for those of you who know me, I'm really passionate about this topic But it's not about the technology by itself. In fact, technology is really a means to an end. It's about the fact that as technology evolves, it unlocks opportunities for us to enable new ways to work. And if we can combine these new ways of working with amazing experiences that engage the customers and the users, it creates magic. Now, I couldn't resist the use of that word magic, given that we're in Orlando and the heart of Disney, but I'm also deliberate about the use of this word. How many of you remember when the iPhone first came out? And the amazement that we had when you could swipe from one picture to the other with your fingers, or use your fingers to zoom in and out of any detail that you wanted to zoom in on. Or think about the world of commerce. And when you want something and you need to get it, but you have no time to go to the store. Imagine the magic of having it delivered to your doorstep even before you make that trip. These are all experiences that we've grown to love and cannot live without today. So the reason I bring this up is because that's the magic that we can deliver with technology and innovation, and that's what we are investing in at Sage. And it's important for our segment. It's extremely important for our segment because in the small, medium businesses, we want our customers to focus on delivering their business outcomes. And we want to do the heavy lifting on the technology side. And you, our ecosystem, are a critical part in being able to deliver that dream that we have. So today, I'm going to talk about 3 specific examples. You've heard over yesterday and today about some of the different areas we're working in, and there's a lot going on within Sage. But in particular, I'm going to touch upon 3 areas. The first one around digital experiences, the second one around automation and AI, and the third one around how we're digitally scaling trust. So let's start with digital experiences. And in particular, I'm going to talk about the natural language interaction. How many of us talk to our devices? Whether it's your phone, your computer, or even your car. Whether it's Google, Alexa, Siri, or name your favorite one. Now, I have to share with you, I've fallen in love with my car. And you may look at me and think, I don't look like the kind of person who'd get excited about a car. I don't care to open my engine and see what's under the hood. But what I love is that today, I can talk to my car, I can tell it where I need to go, and it takes me to my destination. And along the journey, it's got my personalized settings with my favorite music from Spotify, with my seat controls, everything it knows about me. And so that experience, my objective is to go from point A to point B. That's the outcome I'm looking for. But that experience is so delightful, and just through my voice, I'm able to do so much. So voice has become a very powerful piece of interaction with our different devices. The other one that Aaron touched upon earlier was around messaging. WhatsApp has over 1.6 billion active users, and Facebook has over 1.3 billion users. So messaging is almost a normal part of our lives these days. And even in businesses, we use different collaboration tools like Microsoft Teams, Slack, and others. When I'm doing my work, I need the information wherever I am in order to be most efficient. We're able to automate things like some of the reconciliation processes, and we're bringing intelligence in order to be able to recommend where customers may want to assign different codes. And that's really the vision with how we're driving towards AI-enabled accounting. It's about efficiency, it's about accuracy, it's about increased user engagement, and freeing up our users to be able to focus on other value-added tasks. It's also about unlocking hidden insights and data, discovering patterns and trends, making predictions, recognizing anomalies, and being able to give proactive recommendations. So while I showed you one example, there's many other things that we're working on. As Aaron mentioned, we have the GL outlier detection. For those of you who were at Sage Intact Advantage earlier last year, you saw the intelligent timesheet reporting that we're doing. We have predictive billing. And yesterday, Rob shared with you all how we're bringing external data in terms of event, potentially sentiment, weather, etc., and combining it with internal data in order to do better production planning. And of course, there's many other use cases that we would love to work on with our partners as we look at this space. As I said early on, magic happens when you can deliver business outcomes leveraging technology in experiences that create amazement and delight. You, our ecosystem, are a critical part of helping us make this promise a reality for our customers. So please come join us on this journey. Thank you.